Hello everyone. In this video I want to share my thoughts on tanking in Guild Wars 2 because that's a topic that new players who get into raids and maybe have some experience often ask about. How can I become a tank? What is necessary to learn? Is there a guide for tanking? And looking through YouTube, I have found that there are not that many guides that actually talk about tanking. And if they talk about tanking, they focus more on the survival aspect of tanking, or maybe on the gear aspect of tanking. And in this video, I want to be a lot more specific to the fundamental principles that I think are important. So this video is divided into two parts. In part one, I talk about general principles of tanking, and in the second part, I will go through all the bosses in Ring 1 through Ring 4, and we will look together at some recorded gameplay where I explain some thoughts behind my tanking decisions. So without further ado, enjoy! If you want to tank in Guild Wars 2, I think the best way to learn it is to learn Power Soul Beast. Now this may come as a surprise because you would not immediately associate Power Soul Beast with tanking, because Power Soul Beast in fact is one of the worst tanks imaginable. No, you need to learn how to play Power Soul Beast, because then you can get a feeling for what the requirements of a good tank are. Because when playing Power Soul Beast in a pack group, you will immediately notice when the tank makes a mistake, because it directly affects your effectiveness. So I think this is a really good lesson you can take, and we will look at different aspects of Power Soul Beast to show exactly what a tank needs to do. First and foremost, a Power Soul Beast comes with 1150 toughness while merged with his pet due to the trait Pack Alpha and then merging. So as a tank you should be above this toughness value. And the same is actually true for a Power Catalyst, the DPS variant, which is at 1200 toughness, and the Handkite Soul Beast, which is at 1380 toughness. These are toughness values you need to be able to beat as a tank, otherwise you can't be a tank. If you are a DPS boon support trying to tank, you should not go much above what is required. But as a healer, you can freely go up to 1600, 1800, 1900 toughness or more without really losing any kind of healing effectiveness. In fact, in some ways, you actually become a more effective healer if you are more tanky yourself. So in the video clips you're going to see later, I am actually at 1900 toughness on my heal mechanist tank. So there's no shame in going high toughness as a healer. Now the second thing that a Power Soul Beast teaches you is the following trait. Hunter's Tactics. You deal more damage and have an increased chance to critically strike while attacking from behind or from the side. Now the side is defined like anything that isn't in a cone shape in front of the golem or of the boss. So standing here is already flanking. But what that means for you as a tank is that in order to not negatively impact the damage your Power Soul Beast does, is you need to keep the boss turned away from the group. So when you're looking to tank, let's say the stack is here behind the boss. You need to keep the boss like this, and your stack will get very angry with you if you move over and turn the boss into them. Because for a Power Soul Beast, this immediately means that they are going to lose this insane damage modifier. They're losing crit chance, they're losing damage increase. And if you keep him turned this way, then the Power Soul Beast has to move to be flanking again. So this is this is a key aspect. Keep the boss turned away. The next thing is that you need to respect that a power soul beast, even though he has a lot of range skills these days, is also still reliant on being close range. With this skill having 130 range, it just straight up doesn't hit if you're back here, for example. And also this skill here doesn't hit from back here. So you need to keep the boss in a position that allows the power soul beast to stand behind it or to the side of it while being in a melee range. That means if you are on, let's say, Deimos, you can't just keep the boss situated inside a black oil because the soul beast will not be able to flank in that case. And the third thing you need to make sure is that the boss doesn't move. Now, this is a bit difficult to achieve because there are mechanics that clearly force you to move the boss. But let's maybe bring home the point why we don't want the boss to move and add some golem movement here. Power Soul Beast is a very stationary class because he has a skill here that roots him in place for quite some time. If I want to X5 him and the boss runs out of my range, I'm not going to deal damage, right? If I need to chase after the boss all the time. And Power Soul Beast isn't even the worst class for this because I can also keep up with some AoEs if I predict the movement correctly. If you're playing with a conditioned firebrand, for example, and they place their purging flames, and you move the boss out of the purging flames, you're inflicting a huge damage loss on this conditioned firebrand. So make sure that when you move the boss, you move him in a decisive movement, and you only move him once as needed, and not constantly. So now let's take a look at some recordings I have made. And the recordings are from a pickup group run where we did Wing 1 through Wing 4. It was a 500 Legendary Insight group, so things should generally be working well with this group. They know all the mechanics, they are experienced, and I was able to show what we're supposed to do. And the first boss we're talking about is Vale Guardian, and a key thing about Vale Guardian is that we can see some of the requirements, namely standing in place, directly clashes with the fight mechanics, the blue circles that are constantly spawning. And in this recording you can hopefully see how I deal with the blue circle mechanic. So the first thing to note is that the first blue circles didn't spawn on me, so I'm safe here. And now I'm standing with my back against the wall. This allows me to dodge backwards into the wall without moving the boss. Now something that is important is that a block also works like my shield 5, but in this case here I dodged backwards to avoid the blue circle, and I will generally keep dodging backwards for that. A mistake a lot of new tanks make is that they turn the boss into the group. And this is one of the key things to avoid on Vale Guardian, because Vale Guardian hits very hard. Not me, because I have 1900 toughness, but if you're a DPS player and the boss turns on you, you will go down straight to the next screen. Now, something that is perhaps a bit more mechanist specific is that I'm trying to time my barrier output with the green explosions to absorb as much damage as possible into the barrier. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The barrier signet has a longer cooldown than the green fields have, so you can't do it for every green, but for some key greens I will make sure that this is what's going on. So here the boss enters a break bar. I pressed the barrier signet too late. And now there's a blue. I dodge backwards into the wall. There was a slight error. I had to move the boss a bit. But other than that, I keep it completely stationary. Now, if this field, the colored field now swapped, we would have to move over. I would make a minimal movement, but luckily we already phased. So the damage in this group is quite high, which makes it a bit easier. Also note how I use my shift signet to be fast at reviving. About pulling the green guardian here, the only thing you need to do to pull it is stand to it closer than the guys on the red side are standing. So it was enough to go midway, you don't need to go all the way to the green guardian. Now for the last phase, the tanking clashes a bit with the movement, because I said we keep the boss standing still, but this is what we can't do here. Well, because we have to move in a circle. So for the first part, we stand here. I press my barrier signet now, but it turns out that the group is actually just going into the green. And now I have to move. And notice I make this in one movement. And now I stay here. I don't move the boss from here. Now I use my shield to block, to allow my group to stand in the green and keep attacking the boss. And now I don't go all the way, I just stand here. So we can kill the boss with minimal movement in the last part of the fight. So that's already Vale Guardian. This was obviously a very clean Vale Guardian from a quite experienced group, but I think the key points about keeping the boss still, keeping the boss faced away from the group, and moving as minimalistically as possible, they were all quite clearly seen here. And as you can see, nothing in this fight was about survival, right? We are at 1900 toughness, we are extremely tanky here. So this may become as a surprise for people who are tanks in other MMORPGs. They may assume that tanking is all about survival, and this is really not the case in Guild Wars 2, especially if you're tanking as a healer. It's not about surviving, it's really about positioning. And that's what I find missing in other guides that explain tanking. They focus a bit more on the survival aspect than it would be necessary. So let's take a look at Gorseval, where I see a crucial mistake from tanks, which often ends their lives as well. And we will see how we can avoid the mistake. So the important thing when going into Gorseval is keeping the boss turned away from the group. It's slightly tricky with the start, but after that I'll just keep the boss here. And the important thing here is that I'm standing inside the hitbox of the boss, so the group is inside my boon radius. And now the next thing is, during the CC phase, I stand behind the boss together with the group, and only after the break bar I move in front of the group again. And this is a mistake I see a lot of tanks who are new make, is that they will stand far away from the group where they are not effectively healing or handing out boons, when they should really be standing much closer. And during this high pressure situation of Gorseval, the CC phase, they should really be on top of the stack, because the boss is not going to turn. The boss is busy with his attack. He's locked in this animation. You can't turn him in that situation. So you can see how I move here, basically. And after this phase, it's important that I have the boss turned immediately again. If your group isn't clear where they want to stand, you pick a side and they have to adjust. And again, I stand inside the hitbox, so everyone is in range of my healing, of my boons. Don't go too far into the hitbox, because that would turn Gorseval around. Now again, CC phase, I stand behind the boss with my group, and then move to the front again. There's not much more to it on Gorseval when you tank it. Now we do the split phase again, and then we move to the last phase. As you see, I keep the boss turned away again. And the most important thing is just reliability for your group. It doesn't really matter which side you're looking, but just keep it in one way, basically. So one thing about this CC bar, if you break it at 18% or later, you will basically always kill him without doing an updraft. If you have to do an updraft, now is the time to move to a wall. And once he starts his world ender attack, it's already too late. So move early if you need to. Okay, that sums up these two bosses. Now Sabathar has no tanking mechanic. I have a separate kiting guide if you want to refer to that. But let's maybe move on to the next boss that matters. Now Slothasor has no dedicated tanking mechanic. Maybe we can quickly think about tanking. Because the tank is random. I don't get tank at all in this fight, so I can't really show it. But let's maybe just talk about one mistake at Slothasor. You see the tank is marked by this purple marker, and he's right now in the poison. And let's go 10 seconds back actually. Okay, he's going to be inside this poison soon. And in order for the DPS players to keep DPSing, let alone stand behind the boss if you're a power soul beast, which we do have in this group, it would be important to put him to a flankable position. And this right here is not a flankable position by any means. So if you want to tank the boss, you need to pull him over to, let's say, where the circle is, or even further, so the DPS classes can tank. And the tank we do have is just backpedaling slightly and basically keeping the boss locked in a place where you can't really flank him. So on Slothasor you need to make decisive movements, and that's one thing we're going to revisit at Keep Construct later. The boss has a bit higher attack range than you might think, and just because you stand outside of your range doesn't mean the boss will not be inside, will not be able to hit you, right? You need to make decisive movements to force the boss to move. And if you want, especially if you struggle with moving Slothasor, it's probably because you're too hesitant with moving him. Move him far and quickly, and then allow yourself to stand in the same place for longer instead. So that's much better than keeping him halfway in the poison for half the time and then having to move later anyway. Just get it done with, basically. But yeah, this fight is a bit hard to judge because it's emboldened mode. It dies way too quickly. It's very hard to move in that situation. Yeah, and I didn't get any tanking, so I can't really show what I would do. Okay, Bandit Trio has no tanking mechanic. Matthias has no tanking mechanic. So let's go to Wing 4. On Cairn, you can tank the boss by standing at a range, but you have to be the furthest person away from the group. And I actually try to do it, but it's a bit difficult because if players get ported, they immediately get back the tank. So right now, the people getting ported there are tanking. Now I get to eat some auto attacks away from the group, and I try to hit it again, and I even get the red circle for it. But soon the ports will just take over and everyone else is getting auto attacks inside the group. So yeah, but that's how you could theoretically, maybe in a more coordinated group which doesn't forget about a special action key in challenge mode, that's how you would get tanking on Cairn. But yeah, let's move on to Mursaat Overseer, where you can actually show some stuff. I'm claim here. So the key points of claiming at Mursaat Overseer is that you want to keep at least this field here, this field here, this field here, and this one over here. You want to keep these three cleaned up. The fourth one here in this corner is not that necessary because we only will use it in the last 10% of the boss, and with our DPS we won't even use it then. So keeping them clean is important because there are classes which have forced movement and you wouldn't want to force them onto glowing fields. And the second reason why we want to clean them now is that when the statues come in, it's better to be able to reclaim rather than having to spend the claim on the field we have to move to anyway. Because I already know we will need to cross over in the next step. We have to cross over to this field because I know the spike pattern. Or is it this field? But yeah, we got over here. So I have already claimed that. It would be worse if I had to claim it first, so to speak. So yeah. Now I make a mistake. I misjudged the spike pattern and moved the boss into the spikes. This is very bad to do. Now to move the boss out of the spikes again, you see I allow the Zombies to flank by standing over here. And now I move the boss back to this side. Now it gets a bit hectic and my positioning is actually not very good because I'm not allowing him to flank anymore. I should have moved a bit earlier. Okay, and now we can just move the boss once more because we need to. But now I've decided to actually keep the boss here. We will not move over there, that's why I'm also not claiming it anymore. We will just kill here. And the last tank, or the second last tank, at 10%, I actually type /GG. And this saves a lot of time because if you had to like CC him for another 5 to 7 seconds or even longer, you're never gaining this time back. So yeah, you should GG as tank at 10%, unless you really don't trust your group to kill it with only one healer remaining. So Deimos, once again, is slightly more challenging to tank. First part, you should go down into the underworld because honestly, there's nothing to do up here. Since the shackled prisoner, obviously he's losing health if a pride walks in. However, there are actually not enough prides, and if you just slow it down a bit, there are not enough prides to kill him. And once the fight starts, in normal mode, that is, the shackled prisoner actually just heals back to full health. So there's no real reason for people to stay up here. You can just go down and kill the chains faster. Also, there's no reason for only one player to go down. It just makes it slower. So, yeah. Okay, tanking time. So the first thing to note is that I want to keep the boss standing still. So I keep him here. I don't move him at the start. The second thing I want to do is I want to keep the boss on top of the blue bubble. If you keep the boss more towards the edge, right at the start, everyone would have to move to the bubble and then come back to the boss. This is like 7 or 8 seconds where a melee class can't attack the boss properly. And that's just avoidable, and you really shouldn't make that mistake. Now, what happens here is you have to be careful that the group doesn't take you with them on the green. And now is the time where I get to move the boss slightly. I don't want the boss to be exactly in the center when the oil spawns at 60%. So after this Mind Crush, you will see me move the boss. And take note that this is hard to move the boss actually, because once he's decided to stay, he often stays for an animation lock. He does a pizza attack, he does Mind Crush, and he chains these two things into each other, so the boss keeps standing still for quite a while. And so it's quite hard to move the boss actually. But now I move him. It's not the optimal time due to the signet. However, the group is preoccupied with killing Saul anyway, so might as well move him now. And now at 60% comes a key moment where the black oil spawns. And ideally, I would not be standing here anymore. I would have already moved a bit, because I want the boss to be moving as soon as the oil spawns in order to keep, and we refer back to the start, in order to keep the boss attackable for melee players. And you see me move, and I don't wait until the oil is spawned with that movement. I know it's coming. You see me move here, and as you can see, there is actually no point where a melee class would have not been able to hit the boss. He was never in that black field. However, this comes at a small cost, and the cost is that I actually have moved the boss more than what was perhaps necessary. But I do this again in order to enable actual flanking. Just keeping myself barely outside the black is not enough. I need to create some space for the other class to stand next to the boss and hit him, even though they decide to not use it in that situation. But that's that's up to them basically. So what they are doing wrong here is that they are going to place the black field here. Now the problem with that is going to be that now there are two blacks, 1, 2, and they are separating Deimos from the middle. And by separating Deimos from the middle, that means if we go into the ward, afterwards we might have to move around everything to be able to re-access the boss. And a much better choice of putting the black would have been right behind here to allow me to pull the boss further into this direction. But you'll see what I mean. There's going to be a black spawn, and it's not quite ideal. Now, what is obviously going to happen is that they get the next green. We have good DPS, so they are away anyway. But this would have been an issue in case the DPS was worse. So we were, but this here was, we were compensated here. So, and what I'm going to do now is I pull Deimos over here in hopes that this black will despawn soon enough. And what I'm not doing is I'm not going over there with Deimos, because that will make the blacks be a shield between the stack, which will reappear here, and Deimos basically. The blacks will cut him off, even though this black is going to despawn probably. But so the idea behind moving here instead of moving back here is really to keep the boss accessible from the middle once they come back up. Now there's some downtime where there's not much going on. Important thing, even though as a tank have the ability to block the Mind Crush with my shield 5 to be precise, I don't, because I want to be inside the ward. If you suffer from Mind Crush, even if you block it, you get a ticking debuff which damages you over time. And this damages you based on your maximum health, I think. And so even if I have 20,000 health, I get significant damage to this. And So I want to avoid this damage, and there's really no cost in going here as well. Because I've placed the boss well here, I'm not between blacks and the ward, so there's no issue getting into the ward. I can just go here, and the boss will not move into the center due to this, because the boss is animation locked, and before he can move again, I will be out of the ward again. So yeah, this is really not a problem to go into the ward, and it's just the safest thing you can do. And there are actually quite a lot of wipes that happen due to a tank trusting a block, especially from Aegis, and then getting that Aegis stripped to some random attack and then dying. So go into the void as tank, it's really good. Okay, as the next part in this fight, okay, we had the black despawn. We get the group back up, and I think this is a pull where the group actually places the black in the middle, which is going to be bad for us. And you can see here I'm keeping my F2 in case this happens. I'm not using it. And they place the black straight into the center. In order to avoid this, it would be better for the group to move on top of the boss immediately when they come back up. And one more thing about black placement is if you see a black spawn behind your feet, there's actually only one acceptable dodge response direction, and that is forward. You want to dodge towards the boss. Obviously not into another black, of course, but like we have a separation in the group here. We have 5 players who dodged forward, and these players now get to attack the boss. And there are 3 players who dodged backwards, and these are separated from the boss by a black, and it will take a lot of time until they can attack the boss again. And this makes their DPS suffer greatly, even though that's a virtuoso who just doesn't care, but sure, they can pick up some tears now, but this is generally why you should go in front, because you're in melee range, you get boons and everything. Okay, now as I said, I keep my F2 because I need to block for my subgroup. I see there are no other Aegis providers in my group, even though each class has an individual block, at least these 2. And now we get Mind Crush. And this is the key point here. I don't gamble to go for this black, because 1, it would be a very long way, and 2, it's just right on the edge of the oil. That's a bit too finicky for me. So I just stay outside, I press the F2, my mech will hand out Aegis, and I will also shield 5 for myself, because if randomly this pride reaches, or a greed even, reaches Soul, it will yield to explosion that strips Aegis. So I really made sure that like I'm going to survive this Mind Crush. Even if people go down here, I will not go down, and I can revive them afterwards. So as you can see, 3 players went into the middle. It worked out fine for them, but it wasn't worth the risk for me. Okay, we survived perfectly. And now we can move the boss over here. This black will despawn next, so it's not going to be a problem for the next Mind Crush. And look at my position here. Now obviously I could stay here, but this would never move the boss out of the black. He's right in the black here. So I make this exaggerated movement to ensure that after the pizza attack, he's coming for my position. You see? And if he's in a position I like, I can move on top of him with no problem. But I have to create this distance first, so he doesn't decide to use his more long-range attacks to hit me. I don't want him to stay any longer in this black field. This is my #1 priority. So I make this maximum movement in order to force movement from him. Now I moved closer because he started... Oh, I hit the wrong button. Now because he starts moving, I can start moving towards him. And now he's in an ideal spot again. So we can place the next black here. This one will despawn, and then we can move over here. And this black doesn't matter. It's not a barrier because I'm not going to over here, right? I'm not creating a barrier again between me and the center or something like that. I'm really trying to keep the boss accessible to everyone. And you see from the black spawn already he's still accessible in melee range. And now my positioning will just further cement that by forcing in another short move. Yeah. So I keep him here now, just to make him accessible for melee range. Since we've had 2 black spawns, now it will be Mind Crush again. I slow down this Pride a bit. It doesn't really matter, Saul is at full health, but just for the fun of it. We go into the void. My group comes back up. Now, this time they didn't repeat their mistake when coming up. They immediately went to the boss, so the black is going to spawn on this guy here. It spawns always on the closest person that is not the tank, so it's him. And this is a decent black position, it's not in the middle. And I'm going to move over here, I think. Let's see what I'm actually going to do. The boss, yeah, okay, I'm moving him over here. Now this was unfriendly to them, who trusted me to go over there, but I see the hand kite and I've made up my mind to move over here. In coordinated groups this would obviously be better to talk about where you move it, but it's a pack group, we can't talk during the fight. Also now I'm trying to keep him in a way to allow some cleave on the Saul, but we will get ported anyway here, so nobody got ported into black, which is good. And now again I didn't move the boss over to this side, I would have moved him closer to the center, just to keep him accessible. But he's phased anyway. So yeah, final phase, I place blacks. I place the black in front here first. I place the second black next to it. The second black will spawn once he hammers down with both hands. So I go in now and then move backwards. You see it spawns. And that's the kill of Deimos. Now I spent a lot of time talking about Deimos, but I think it's important to really see all the things that are going on with this fight, because there's a lot to think about. Escort is not interesting. Let's talk about Keep Construct. We actually did the challenge mode, which means we can't directly tank at the wall, and you'll see one special adaptation of because of that. So first things first, don't go towards the boss as a tank, because it just encourages him to do his long range attacks. By standing as close as possible, you can make sure that it is just one swift movement where he moves towards you as tank. The boss decided to turn a bit, which is unfortunate. Okay, now there's a statue here. Now the ideal way to tank the statue is to stand over here, so the statue clearly moves on top of the boss and can be cleaved. If you stand too close here, the statue just stays inaccessible. But that's not something that bothers you as a tank, because you're never going to be fixated. But still, it's maybe important to know as a DPS player. And this statue was moved just fine. And this statue was moved perfectly. He even moved over here, and this pulls the statue inside the boss, which is just great. Okay, nothing else happens. I keep the boss still as much as I can. Then there's no tanking going on. So first thing first, the boss is in the middle. Make sure that you don't die here. As a healer, you should probably cleanse conditions, apply barrier, and so on. Then we go to a wall in front of the statue. Unfortunately, one player who was randomly fixated kept the boss in the center. So what's important now is that I move him quickly on top of the statue that spawned here. And I actually go the extra mile by standing very close to the edge to really make sure that he moves. I even go into this damaging AoE. Now you should only do that if you know that you're going to survive it. And I know that I'm surviving it and I'll move out as soon as I can. But I really want to pull the boss as close as possible to the statue in order to make the statue explosion overlap with the boss. So yeah. And immediately when he started moving, I was able to move back into him because boss movement is a bit slow to update, so I was able to avoid some extra damage. And now I make sure that the other statue was also in range. And we face him again. There's nothing to do here. Collect some more orbs. Then on to the final phase. Again, we heal through. Apply barrier. And this time we have a better KC drop. He will go up in the air. He's still here. Remember that when you pull in statues, he's still on top of this. And then he just gets CC'd again. So in this phase, there's actually nothing unique to tanking. Yeah, his animation locked anyway. So yeah, just kill the boss. Okay, so when tanking Xera, this can be quite intimidating for new tanks because there's a lot about positioning going on here. And I think if you're nervous, you can also learn how to position the boss while playing Power Soul Beast, because then it really hammers home the point where the boss should be at. So you can A, flank, and B, not be hit by random attacks and random mechanics, like where to move, where not to be in the shards. This can all be learned as a DPS. We have 1900 toughness. There's nothing Xera can do to us that really threatens us. I'm still showing you some ways to avoid taking damage, but you can always just face tank if that part of it is too much for you right now. So the first thing to note is that the arena will be split halfway down this middle line, and there's going to be a gravity well that lifts up everyone on this side, so we preferably keep Xera over here. And that's what I'm going to do. Important to note, I keep her basically in the middle. I could move slightly back, but now that I've decided on this spot, I've decided it's better to keep her here rather than move her and risk that someone loses an attack or something. Like, boss movement should be kept to a minimum. Now, what they should be doing is they should anticipate this gravity well here, so they should not be standing in this half of the arena. They should already be positioned over here. They're still flanking from this position, so there's no downside to standing here. Now about the Blood Frenzy attack, which is dangerous. We're going to see it right now. This is the gravity well. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to dodge backwards and then forwards again. This basically eliminates all the damage I could take from it. What I'm not allowed to do is I'm not allowed to move it into the group. I can't dodge forward first because that would turn Xera and she turns with you and she just kills everyone. So when you dodge, you need to dodge backwards or sideways, but backwards is really the safest position here. Blood Frenzy, back, front. And the reason I'm dodging forwards again is that I don't want Xera to move, so I'm close to her now. Now the laser comes. At 75%, the laser will despawn and it doesn't do anything anymore, so we can stay here. There are some very low damage groups which will have to move out. If you have to move out, move over here. It's a safe spot for this phase. But yeah, most packs I meet this day have more than enough damage, and even in training groups, especially if they have mechanists and virtuosos and other easy to play classes, you will often notice that the damage is more than enough. Like, this is not even particularly good squad DPS, and it's enough to phase her before the laser appears. Okay, now this Elixir Gun 4 was a mistake. I should not have moved Xera further. Okay, now the next order of business is that there's going to be a gravity well on this side. So I move Xera over here, so everyone can keep attacking her. I don't want to be surprised by the mechanic, because I want players to allow to move proactively before they have to dodge out of something. And that's because dodging is a DPS loss, right? So I want to move really proactively. And she is in a safe position, already anticipating the gravity well. There's a Blood Frenzy, I just phase tank it. It doesn't do damage. Okay, let's talk about second phase. Second phase starts out again, but this time on the gravity well is going to be on this side. First phase it was on this side, now it's going to be over here. So I position myself in that way so everyone is on this field, on this half of the field. And yeah, we keep Xera in the middle again. No movement, I just keep her here. But this time there's no laser we could skip. The laser will not despawn. So we actually have to move. And I make this movement as early as possible because I like being proactive about movement. Now the laser starts shooting. And you can see that I have placed myself on this half because I knew there was a gravity well coming here. But I also don't want to be too far over here, because if you're particularly, or if you have very particular DPS numbers, there can come a gravity well on this side. And this would be very bad if you were deep into it. So yeah, I'm standing here just to be safe. Now this gravity well had to be blocked, this Blood Frenzy had to be blocked with a shield 5, because otherwise you would take too much damage maybe. And dodging is not really an option, because if I dodge right I will cleave these guys. If I dodge backwards I fall off. Front is not an option, and gravity well is also not ideal. So shield block was the only option. If you are in a class without a block, you have to face tank it. Make sure you have 2000 toughness. Okay, now comes a crucial moment. As soon as the laser despawns, you want to move back into the middle, because her next attack is going to be crowd control. And if she locks herself into crowd control out here, the shards might catch up to her, and as soon as she's in the shards, she converts all these condies into boons on herself, which means that the soft CC is not working anymore, and she gets ages from burning, I think. So this is going to be really bad. And yeah, we can't really CC her anymore. That's why I move preemptively, in case the break bar appears. Now, in a normal group, we would now have to clear these shards, because there's going to be a gravity well along this center line again, and there's going to be a laser in the middle, which forces us out of the center. So we clear this side, we move the boss here, move back to the boss in the center. Once the laser is gone, then if necessary we can clear down here, move the boss out, move backwards. But here we are at 15% health, and this commander has made the call: we don't clear shards, we just kill the boss. If the commander makes such a call, you have to obey it. If I start moving the boss somewhere else, well, we're going to wipe. We'll just trust the commander's call and we'll do it. And if it doesn't work, you can talk about it after the fight. But during the fight, the commander is in charge. So I don't assume to know better. And he really knew what he's talking about here, because it works perfectly. Gets another special action key. And a CC bar. This CC bar is dangerous, because if you don't break it quickly, this delays the boss a lot and a laser could spawn, and this could put us in trouble. Now, during the CC bar, Xera takes reduced damage by a huge percentage of damage reduction, actually. And so it's really important to break this immediately. And I use all my CC on it, however limited that is. But yeah, it works like a charm, we kill the boss. And that's Xera tanking for you. Obviously, with lower DPS, more mechanics happen, but I think knowing these key patterns, where to keep the boss, that is basically all that there's to learn about Xera. And once you've played the fight a few times, doesn't matter if you're DPS or tank, you get a feeling for where the gravity wells are going to spawn, when the laser spawns, and how to move it. And as I said, Blood Frenzy is not really a concern. You have so much toughness that you will survive as a healer. Okay, that's it for this video, for this tanking commentary. I hope you enjoyed my insights on all the boss encounters that have a dedicated tank in Ring 1 through Ring 4. And I hope you recommend this video to people who want to know more about tanking. Have a nice day.